Well, hey guys, we're on a roll, so we're just going to keep going here. So let's, in the last video, I mentioned let me turn the radio down. I mentioned that these things were conditioned to believe in the last 80 years. Everybody in the West, so a narrative can be controlled and perpetuated. Well, let's talk about that narrative. So, if you think about post-World War II, and if you're old enough to know about several of those decades, and if you're not, it's prevalent even in the last couple decades. World War II wraps up. We've got a period in the 50s where some very interesting things were going on politically, setting the stage for decades. So we have the Cold War develop, and the next thing you know, Russia and the US, Bay of Pigs, Kennedy, okay? Well, the world elite loved World War II because the money they made through the war was incredible. And they said, hey, this can't end. We better get some more wars going. Cold War, Korea, Vietnam, all the way through the 60s, 70s. Well, wouldn't you know it, the Cold War ends in the mid-80s, late 80s, and right on the heels of that, Iraq invades Kuwait. And now we have literally the US versus the Middle East, Arab countries in perpetuity since the early 90s, since the end of the Cold War. And that reaches a fever pitch with 9/11, even though all through the 90s we had all this conflict with Iraq, Saddam Hussein, ongoing with Iran. But we get 9/11, and that facilitates, again, if you don't believe in the narrative of 9/11, you're unpatriotic. But 9/11 happens, and then we literally have a 20-plus year, no questions asked, no holds barred, reason for war with Arab countries. Well, and wouldn't you know it, the minute that kind of wraps up and we pull the last Americans out of Afghanistan in the fall of 21, just a few months later, Russia's in Ukraine, and oh boy, we've got to start spending billions again in early 2022. And then, gosh, that wasn't enough. In October of 23, we had to have a big old conflict with Hamas and Israel, the modern day nation of Israel. And here we are from the 1950s to 2025, and there's always multiple wars. When one ends, another one has to start. Well, guys, think about it, right? All of that plays to the patriotic heartstrings and the false narrative, false biblical teaching around Israel. And if you question it, you're not a patriot and you're a racist. And these wars are a total lie. They're fabricated to facilitate the laundering of money through the world military industrial complex, not just the US. Yeah, the US is the biggest part of it, but it's worldwide. If you question, look what happens when people question military spending. You're unpatriotic. So it's just a fact. You could diagram it. Maybe we should diagram the wars for the last 80 years, post World War II. But then again, you go back and look at World War I, and World War II was coming right on the heels of it. I think, I don't know prior to World War I, but that was the modern day narrative of always need a war to move trillions of dollars around the planet. It's a total abomination, guys. And maybe the conversation, we could take the conversation spiritual, and we could say, well, what does Christ think about all this? Or why doesn't he stop it? Well, when you know the scriptures, that's not how it works. Okay? The evil of man, the free will of man, it runs unbridled in the physical world. Okay? The sanctuary that we have from that is in the spiritual world, in the kingdom. Okay? The kingdom has always been about sanctuary from the evil physical world, guys. You're here physically, but spiritually, you're somewhere else. Again, the lack of understanding around that is the number one reason we're in the situation we're in the physical world. I would recommend 1 John. When I started diving into the scriptures almost 7 years ago, I was led to 1 John, and now I know why. Because I had lived in the world for the first 48 years of my life, 48 plus. And 1 John will tell you all about that. And it makes it really simple. You cannot love the physical world and love the kingdom of God at the same time. The two are completely incompatible. Now, what does that mean? Since I'm here, I can't love somebody in the world that's struggling, or maybe for the world. No, that's not what it means. It means you can't love the things the world stands for, all this greed and this war and the money. It's all about greed and money, guys. If you love that, and if you're part of that system, you have no knowledge of Jesus Christ. We'll catch up soon, guys.